Well, welcome everyone. This is the Grace Hour Show, Christian program that looks at different challenges and issues, and we want to help you with your faith. We want to help encourage you in the faith, the precious faith, and it's a biblical orientation that we're presenting here. My name is Steve Andrulonis. I'm one of the pastors here at Greater Grace Church in Baltimore. With me is Philippe Serradji, who is the young adults leader here at our church in Baltimore. And we're talking about, this week we're analyzing like some of the trendy kind of issues.
Yeah.
During the week. Today we're talking about this, maybe you've read it, on the internet, you come across this kind of thing if you are a believer, deconstruction. And we're going to talk about what this is and why it has sort of sunk its, I don't want to be too negative, but I'm saying why it has sunk its claws into Christian circles, and what does it mean? And of course, with the internet, you can really say anything you want at any time you want with very little supervision. And so there's a lot of things that are said about what deconstruction is, and this is maybe you could define it. You have a definition there, Philippe, and you could talk about that, share that, and then we could have it as sort of a launch point for our discussion today.
Yeah. So when we talk about deconstruction, there's a positive side and there's a negative side. So before I go into definition, let me be clear what you and I are talking about today, and we'll say more on this as well. But is there a good side to what people might say deconstruction? Yes. If I come from a very legalistic background, I have to relearn what I've learned because I realize maybe I've been lied to. So it's not because I've been in the church for 20 years that there's nothing wrong with my belief. Maybe where I went to church, the pastors, the leaders, the teachers were not grounded in scriptures. And we know it's obviously the case because with so many different families in the evangelical world, someone has to be wrong. You can either lose your salvation or not. You lose your salvation. Not everybody can be right. On the sacraments, on the way we do church, on the role of the finished work in people's life. So if I grew up in a certain way, which I believe as a Christian is wrong, and then I have to relearn my Christianity. So in a way, I have to deconstruct some of the things I've learned to rebuild on a stronger foundations. So that's good. We'll talk about Acts 17:11 later. But what we're discussing is when people take this deconstruction a little further down. I'm going to read a paragraph that I read, I found very interesting on this website called Got Questions, and so this is what they said: deconstruction is the heading most recently applied to the process of questioning, doubting, and ultimately rejecting aspects of the Christian faith. Right? So let me read it again. Deconstruction is the heading most recently applied to the process of questioning, which I think is good, doubting, and ultimately rejecting aspects of Christian life or Christian faith. That's the issue on the negative side. So this is in application deconstructionism, an approach that claims to disassemble beliefs or ideas while assuming their meaning are inherently subjective, meaning you and I have the authority to decide on our own whether it's true or not, right? So that's behind this. Both the trends and this title reflect backlash against the unfortunate habit within some religious circles to downplay deep questions and ignore those who hold them. Point being is, I was discussing with Pastor Taggart the other day about something, and we realized, and he came with these sentences, with these two words: we radicalize when we marginalize. So I radicalize someone when I marginalize them, meaning that if you come to me with questions and I push you away because you have legitimate questions, you will become a radical. So you may enter into deconstruction because I don't give you room. I don't give you the necessary room for you to ask those questions. So to openly investigate the nuances of belief, even changing one's convictions, that is a biblical concept.
Yes.
Right. I'm sure if you look back in your life, there's things you believed 20 years ago you don't believe anymore. It's not because you've changed your view on scriptures, is that we've grown and we realize, I was wrong on this. Mm-hmm. So That's what we're talking about today. There is two kinds of deconstruction. The positive kind, which I wouldn't use the word deconstruction, would just be open to the Spirit to show me scriptures. That's not. And then on the negative side, deconstruction is for me to be autonomous from the Word, autonomous from God, have a very subjective experience to defining whether I believe something from the Bible or not. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's, when we think about it, it's, the book of Proverbs does talk about soul structure in a way, and having the rooms of your soul sort of furnished in a certain way. And so we understand that those rooms can, they might be full of, if you're a hoarder, if you become like sort of a hoarder, you can crowd the internal part of yourself with a lot of stuff that really does need to be maybe taken out with the trash. Yeah. It is like you're saying, there is this, like, it is a biblical concept to like to allow God to search your heart and to also examine yourself and to see, well, did I think this way? Did I think this way? I did think that way. And why did I change my thought process? That it came through either reflection or a message that I heard. You're just growing. You're not. You don't immediately. You don't immediately walk when you come out of the womb.
Yes.
You grow as a believer, and you learn, and you if you have if you're connected to a good community, a good faith community, a good church community, you have people that encourage you and show you the way and allow you space to ask your questions. I think that's the big thing, the negative thing, the negative connotation. Like you're saying, we don't want to marginalize anyone who is maybe wrestling with their skepticism of what they've read in the Bible. It's like you can only go so far on a faith that is not your own.
Yes.
Like if you are living on a faith that you were birthed into, and it was a faith that your mom and dad, pushed you into. Why are we going to this church? Why are we going to this right now? Well, because that's what we do. This is what our family do. And as long as you live here, you're going to be a part of this. And then at a certain point, you become an adult, responsible for your own, your own living space and everything like that. You got to think for yourself. You got to start thinking for yourself. And I don't believe that. I don't believe like you believe. And then really, we have the one part of it is like people who are deconstructing. Maybe they really. Do you think it's possible that people who are chucking these things never really develop their own relationship with the Bible, with Christ, and with the body of Christ?
I mean, I'm saying yes, but of course I cannot speak for people's motivations and heart. This is between them and God. Romans 14 is very clear, and they stand and fall before God. But on the other hand, though, you said something interesting. Like you cannot leave on the faith that is not your own. And I think you're nailing it by just saying that, because let's use two words to express, maybe to unpack what you just said. We can have opinions and we can have convictions. Both are good, except some convictions need to be convictions and they cannot be opinions, and vice versa. The way I like to present it for myself, I'm thinking about these concentric circles diagram, where at the core, we have the what we call the cardinal doctrines. If you don't hold to those, we cannot have fellowship. We can be friends and neighbors, but we're not Christians. We cannot be both Christians. If you believe that Jesus is not God, then you're not a Christian. So it's something that separates religions. And then you have the second level of like important major doctrines, where that separates maybe denominations. You don't believe. You believe you can lose your salvation. I don't. Can we collaborate? I don't think we can. This is a different gospel for me. But you're born again Christians, and I welcome you. And then you have minor doctrines, which is maybe in my church we take communion once a month. In your church, you take communion every time you gather. Yeah. Can we work together? Yes, because when we get together, I will take communion with you because I love to take communion. It's not a matter. It's like it's a difference. It's a difference in practice. And the last circle of differences would be the opinions, where we are in the same church. We go together in the same service. We just don't agree on some things that are maybe not legislated in the Bible. And if we don't know the difference between the chord, level 1, level 2, and level 3, then we are going to be going to be confused. And I think that's when. So as a Christian, I need to grow in understanding what are convictions, what are opinions. Like, can I go to church here in Baltimore and hear something from a pulpit and disagree with it? Yes, if these are opinions. Maybe, I don't know, let's say maybe a pastor gets up and says, I think a Christian should get up early in the morning, like 5 o'clock, and pray for 2 hours. Okay, well, maybe I go to bed at 4 o'clock because I have a night shift.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get up at 5. And am I going to lose my faith over that? No. These are opinions. He's giving me an example of what he or somebody else does. I don't have to apply this to my life. Now, whether he says something biblical, I have to decide whether I obey or not. But I cannot, if in the family or in the church, we don't leave the space for Christians who ask the deep questions, we are pushing them towards the wrong kind of deconstruction. Because I think we need to have the safe space for people to be able to ask the hard questions. And that's one way to make faith as your own. Like, I teach apologetics to the seniors at the Christian school, and I see them for 2 hours a week, and we have a conversation. The first month, I completely dedicate the first month to critical thinking.
Okay.
And the main idea is you have to develop critical thinking, and I understand that. I said, well, yes, also in church. Also in church. Meaning that Acts 17:11, the Bereans were described as having a better attitude than the one of Thessalonica because they checked every day to see if what Paul and Barnabas taught them was according to scriptures. So when you think about this for a second, okay, first, they are better than the other ones because they check things. And number two, they have the best guys in town available, the Apostle Paul. I don't know if the Apostle Paul come to our convention one day, that's going to be the biggest day of our life. This is the biggest preacher of 20th century of Christianity. He was under the same scrutiny as anybody else. So Luke, who writes the book of Acts, is actually explaining to us, you need to fact check. That's what we need to do. So when we foster that environment for our young people, for anyone in the church, then in a way we allow them to deconstruct some things, build convictions, and they don't need to reject the word of God by go all into the wrong kind of deconstruction. That's what I believe. Yeah,
you end up. Well, I mean, the thing is, let's put it this way. You could enter into a process of deconstruction just because, it's the popular thing to do. It's like you become like, and now you're deconstructing not because you're really searching your own interior, your own interior. You are, you saw something, you read something, and you decided, I'm going to do this because, it seems like something cool to do. Yeah. It's like it's a popular thing to do. So I'm going to enter into the language. I'm going to borrow the jargon, the words that go with it, and I'm going to enter into a. It's not really unfaithing. You can't really unfaith. Let's just get it. You can't really unfaith. You live by faith. You live by faith. You got up this morning, right? You got up this morning, right? And we drive on the highways to get to our offices, right? And we're living by faith. We're living one that our vehicle can reach the speed and 10 miles above the speed, which is a pretty safe, not avoided. And we're also exercising faith in the fact that everyone else behind these vehicles that weigh more than 2 tons and are moving at 55 to 70 to 80 miles per hour, we're trusting that everyone else behind the wheel has been trained in the operational process, and also in the whatever the societal process. This lane means this. You signal, you cut me off. I know what I'm saying. So we live by faith. We have faith. Everything is faith. You're not unfaithing. You're refaithing. Yes. And maybe your faith isn't the faith that you got growing up. You feel like it just doesn't work anymore. Yes. And that's a thing. Like, it just doesn't work anymore. But it isn't like you have no faith. It's like it's the place that you are directing your faith. And we're saying, like, this is a healthy thing. You should know why you believe what you believe.
Yes.
It's like it's a part of the basic process of searching the scriptures. Jesus exposed himself to questions all the time.
Yes.
And he didn't always give answers that people liked. He was, I'm reading in Luke chapter 20 about, he was questioned about three things. His authority, why do you do the things that you do? And Jesus said, well, let me ask you, you tell me. And so he answered their question with his own question. John the Baptist, did he have the authority of heaven or not? Now, John the Baptist was counted as a prophet, and he had stood up to Herod, and he'd lost his head. And if they had said, no, he's not from heaven, that group of people would have been stoned. Jesus, and then death and taxes.
Yes.
Like he answers, and all those things, he's addressing these things. And, so Jesus opened himself to questions himself. And then, one guy asked him, what is the greatest commandments? And Jesus answered, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's like, so we know that Jesus had this kind of back and forth kind of thing. It's like, if you have been in an orientation that's legalistic, and I would say that, you probably need to implode that.
Yes.
You need to deconstruct that. You
Yes.
need to carry out that kind of stuff that's making it impossible for you to see Jesus for who he really is.
Yeah.
But really the way that you see the Bible, the way that you see the scriptures really relate to like how you answer the question that Peter answered.
Yes.
Who do men say that I am? Well, they say it is. Well, who do you say that Jesus is? Do you believe him to be, the Christ, the Son of the living God? Because then everything changes. It's built on the relationship that you have with the Son by the Spirit.
Yeah.
And then you look at the scriptures in a different way, right?
Yeah, because I think that's the key. I think he's saying, like, so some of the things they're saying here is, like, in practice, the construction always act as a polite cover for demolition, which is very interesting.
Demolition.
I think it's a different. Deconstructing and demolitioning is two different things. So I think we could word. I don't think the word deconstruction actually describes what people. I think it's you. We should use the word deconstruction the positive way and demolition in the negative way.
Okay. So two different words.
That's very different, and that's
because demolition is like it's the
it's a wrecking
the
ball.
wind, and the wind carries away the dust that's left.
Yeah. So So let me repeat again. So the point being is that what we're saying is that in any environment, school, family, church, we need to understand that fostering an environment of healthy questioning should be encouraged.
Yeah.
Kids need to know, young people need to know, teenagers, young adults, and new Christians who come to the faith can ask this question. Can I ask this question? Yes, you can. I don't have the answer. I encourage you to look it up, please. These are some resources. Go ahead and read those. But what about this? What about this? And I remember when I was director of the Bible College here in Baltimore, I got a student who came and he registered for classes and he says, I'm here because I don't know if I believe in God. And my answer was, well, you're in the right place. It's like, what the heck? Well, no, if people are not, but he's questioning and he's asking. So I told him, how about this? You and I meet once a week. And every time you have a question, I'll give you a chapter to read in a book. And then you come back and you're going to have a conversation. It lasted for a semester and a half. I won't say who it is, but now this guy is a missionary. He loves God. He cleared this question. And the reason why I approached it this way, because I remember when I was 16, 17, I think I said the story several times, but I'm going to repeat it again. In France, when you're in high school, the last 2 years, you major, right? So like in America, you major in university. In France,
focusing. Yeah, you're focusing in your direction.
Yeah, so junior and senior, you're focusing on where you're going to go after.
Yeah.
So I majored in philosophy and literature. So it means like you have 8 to 12 hours of these in 25, 30-hour a week. So the vast majority of your class are in your major. Mm-hmm. And I took this because I was in the church and I just didn't want to live as a Christian. The thing is, this is my chance to intellectually defeat my convictions so I don't have to live as a Christian anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I understand the process. I want to be free to be able to do like everybody else. Here I am, this weight of conviction that I have. So I spent over a year, in going to the classes, asking questions and realizing, and I actually got allowed me to have that because I didn't go to church. I went to high school, but I had this friend who was in the church, was very good with apologetics and answering questions. So I would compare, I would ask my teacher in philosophy, and I had my friend in apologetics in the church to ask the same questions. And slowly I realized, well, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't work. And I went back to my friend in the church. Well, that makes more sense, And and 18 years old, I enrolled in Bible college. That was it for me. So I think there's a healthy environment that God provides for us to ask the questions. And actually, at the end, I could not deconstruct my faith. I could not demolish my faith because it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The foundation was too strong. So, of course, some of the things I've heard that didn't make any sense for me, so I moved on from those things. And that's exactly the positive things that we need to do. Is like not everything that people say in my church are true, but is the Bible true? And if the Bible true, then my faith cannot be developed on subjective thinking. It has to be developed on objective thinking. And that's exactly what we're discussing here. So there's a healthy process and there's an unhealthy process. The healthy process is fostering an environment where questions are possible. Mm-hmm. The unhealthy process comes from what we call postmodern ideas.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, you look at history, you have what they call the Dark Ages, and then you have a Renaissance, which is the Enlightenment century with the French philosophers, 18th century, Voltaire, Rousseau, Diderot, all these guys who basically enlightened the world with new ideas so we could escape from the faith. And that ushered in the Age of Reason until World War II. So from the Enlightenment century until the 1950s, you had this idea that reason is the ultimate authority. Now, when we see that the 20th century was the world century in human history in terms of death toll,
war.
I realized war and
2 world wars,
and all kinds of wars, and the death toll is close to 200 million in the first 50 years of the 20th century. You realize, okay, maybe reason doesn't work. So now we are not in the modern era; we are in the post-modern era. We are beyond. So reason now is a problem. Yeah. Facts are a problem. Let's have a subjective approach to life and everything will be okay. And I think this creeps into our understanding as Christians that my convictions are actually subjective. They don't come from scriptures. And so I have to deconstruct any authority that comes from scriptures so I don't have to obey that. And I think it's a major problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I think it comes down to a couple of points, like you said. There is one big question, like, is Christianity true?
Yep.
And this is, can we prove that God is real? And the question, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'm like saying, using human reason. And no, we can't. We have to admit that. But neither can you prove that God is not there.
Yep.
It's like, this is a belief system. So, and is Christianity true? Do you believe what the Bible says about that? Are the documents of the Gospels reliable? And you can, based on, historical people who aren't believers have said that, probably the gospel accounts are reliable. There's, people told the stories, they're different, but they're reliable. Are they true? That's one thing. But then you cross over to another point, right? Is it good? That's where we're getting to. Like, now we're starting to get to like value judgments rather than, okay, so you can't, I'm using my human reason to deconstruct myself because I'm just, you're saying like, because Christianity, I'm just finding that it can't be true because it's not working in my life. And then you enter into a value judgment. It's really not good because look at what Christians do.
Yeah.
Look at how bigoted they can be. Look how exclusive they are, that kind of thing. And so this is creating like the sort of tension and like, let's go through the Bible. We know Paul mentions names of people who were believers, who were followers, and then stopped following, and he makes it clear about them. And these people, people have always, from the very beginning, people have departed from the faith. It's like, and they followed it, and they saw that it was, they believed it was real. They believed it was real. They got disappointed. It wasn't satisfying them the way that they thought it was going to satisfy them, and then they become non-followers.
Yes.
And they leave. They're no longer with people that they were talking about, and that's the big thing. Like you're saying, is like, we've entered into this era where, the don't tell me what to do era, which is a law in itself, because you're saying, don't tell me what's true. Don't tell me that the Bible's true. I'll find my truth for myself. Well, that's a truth,
Yes.
And you turn into just as much of a bully, because if you create like an online mob that believes just like you believe, you're an oppressor. I'm sorry. You can't define anyway, because, if it was just one-on-one, face-to-face, and you're having a conversation, that's a give and take, question and answering. It can be a decent, civil, and you can agree to disagree. But when you collect a mob with you and they're all in the same thinking process, then you've become a bully. And you start like like you said, what'd you say? Marginalize, you radicalize them.
Yeah.
So, when we marginalize someone else's opinion, when we push it away, then we become sort of a radical against it, and we join with the crowd that wants to say, you can't tell me what to do. You can't, there's no law. You can't tell me what to do. Well, the fact that you're making a law about me not telling you what to do.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to use the Bible to tell me what to do. It's like, you've just created an absolute. Congratulations.
Yeah.
There are no absolutes. You just created one.
You just did.
Just by saying that there are no absolutes, you've created an absolute. So how can you be absolutely right that there is no absolute?
Yes. It's the worst kind of absolute, because it's a self-defeating absolute.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just, I designed all those statements to confuse you, especially Jehu. It's his birthday, right?
Yeah, well, it's his birthday when we're recording it. This is pre-recorded, so you can still send him messages, because you'll be a couple days late.
Yeah, there we go.
Because in case you want to know, he was born on August 12th, which is a very good birthday. I think August is a good month to be born, so he's almost like, I don't know, he's between 15 and 25, somewhere in there. So that's
something like that.
Nobody knows exactly. It's a mystery. Anyway, so go back to deconstruction.
That's just our comic relief. We're getting back to the serious topic
serious stuff. So there's something here that I'm looking at, some of the questions, right? So maybe, like, how should Christians talk about deconstruction? Well, there's a healthy process. I think we described that, of systematically breaking down one's beliefs in order to find the truth, right? So, for example, like I'm asking, okay, so I'm going to say something. It's interesting because I have an exercise with some people, because it's interesting in the age of social media. And I'm going to say something that's maybe going to hurt some feelings, but that's fine. It's just Philippe Serradji, has nothing to do with our church here. It's just me. But what I do sometimes, even people I know, like we go to the same church, people I've known for years, 9 out of 10 controversial posts that they post are not true. Now, I did the math myself. I went through and think, well, that's not true. And a simple fact check would be enough. Oh, the fact check. I'm not talking about fact checkers. I'm talking about doing the work yourself.
Yeah.
So, and that idea of like a critical thinking is absolutely fundamental for us as Christians, because, and I'm a little worked up about it, because our young people are looking at older people saying stuff that are not true, and they know they are not true, and they're questioning the integrity of Christians.
Yeah,
and as they should. So that's a big one in one way. So I said something the other day. I asked a group of people, how many times, don't answer the question because it's a trick
question.
Trap.
Okay.
How many times do we find "do not fear" in the Bible? Most people answer 365. Not true. People look at me, well, but it's encouraging. Yes, but it's not true. Now, if it was only one time in the Bible, would that be encouraging enough? It would.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be this magical number? I think it's 78. That's how much I counted. Anyway, even if I'm wrong by 100, it's not 365. And it's the same idea. Sometimes we say nice things. When I remember, because this process of thinking, when I was in my first year of Bible college, I had a teacher. I took a class of apologetics, and the teacher said great things. And he said one thing one day just bothered me. He says, "Well, so explaining why." So remember when Joshua prayed and God held half a day in the sun up so they would finish the battle, And this teacher in apologetics in the Bible college told the whole class, well, we did calculations, and actually, guess what? We're missing one day. And that's exactly, so it proves. So I'm thinking, we're missing one day. How do we know we're missing one day?
Yeah.
How do you know how many days?
Yeah.
Because in the previous class, it gives us the whole chronology on, we don't know exactly, maybe the beginning of the earth with Emily was between 6,000 and 10,000 years. So you're missing 4,000 years, and you tell me you found the missing day in Joshua. How did you come to that?
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know exactly what day Christ was born.
That's true.
Which is, so because it was a calculation done during the Middle Age, and we found out there was it was wrong. So the point being is, but the whole class was like, oh my God, like we found the missing day. No, we haven't.
Yeah.
But that just bothered me because it tainted the respect I had for that teacher. Because I'm thinking, if you don't give me some odd arguments that you cannot even prove, then what about the rest? And it really put me in place. Because I just came out of that season I was telling you about, was questioning everything. And now you're going to come back, I'm taking my first class in apologetics, and you're going to say something that is not true. That bothers me. So as teachers and pastors and leaders, we have to be extremely careful as we go back to how do we avoid like the big wrong kind of demolition, which is the wrong kind of deconstruction. First, we fact check ourselves. Yeah. We teach the Bible, not our opinions. We foster an environment where we allow people to ask their hard questions, and we welcome those questions by giving as much answers as possible, and we let people deal with their things with God. But we do have to be adamant on the fact that we believe, and that's one thing that I say when people ask me questions, okay, before we talk, we need to have an agreement here. Is the Bible the Word of God? Because if you tell me no, there's not much we can talk about. But if you tell me yes, we can have a conversation. So just a few thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. I had the same kind of experience when I was younger. It was a different kind. It wasn't an apologetics class, but there was somebody coming around, talking about the satanic influence in rock and roll music.
Yeah.
So, and they were playing records backwards. It was
I
like
heard
back in
the subliminal messages.
Subliminal messages and everything like that.
Yeah.
If you play this song, backwards, it says it's fun to smoke marijuana. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, okay.
I heard the same.
So I'm watching this, and they're showing like, and it's, and there was this era, with when back in the days when they had, when vinyl was first popular, and you had big albums, and there's like satanic imagery on there. You can see the devil there, and I'm buying it. And then then he got to one of my favorite groups that I had been listening to most of my life, and the guy said something about him offering his son to Satan for popularity, and that was like, you're right. When you say something unfactual, when you drop something in there. And I knew the kid had died because I was a fan of the group. I knew the kid had died from a congenital heart failure. It was really a miracle that he lived 4.5 years, because of the heart that he had.
Yes.
And so this whole story came up. And so, like you said, I got spun out. You got spun out because this apologetics professor said and I remember this. There was a guy who used to tour around here. He came and spoke to one of our Bible studies in this ministry, and he was an engineer, and he was hilarious. He was really funny, but he told that whole story about how he worked at the National Center of Aeronautics down near D.C., and they figured out where the lost day was, and the sun stood still, and then you calculate in when Hezekiah, the sun went backwards 10 degrees, and this puts everything into a nice, tidy box. Yeah. I'm here to say that, Jesus didn't put things in a nice, tidy box, because he gets asked in Luke 20, by whose authority do you do what he said? And he said, I'll give you a question. John the Baptist, was he from God or not? Yeah. Well, we can't answer. Okay, well, then I'm not going to tell you. So when people say, why are you saying that? I said, because there's certain things that God is not going to, he's not in the business of fact checking himself. Yes. It's like he's not going to try and fit everything into your human reasonable mind, because even if you had all the answers, you would still, there would be still something about God that would disappoint you. Yes. I mean, it's just the fact. Yeah. It's like when we look through the Bible, it's like everyone has a disappointing moment, and do they still believe in the relationship and the love that God has for them? That's the crisis point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I said that you're mentioning the hard rock. When I was younger, I had my hard rock phase, so I had my favorite band, which was obviously AC/DC and Kiss and all these things.
Yeah.
And I've heard someone say came to me, "Did you hear about what those names stand for?" Which I thought I knew, but obviously they had another meaning, which
Yeah.
is AC/DC means Antichrist and Death to Christ, which ridiculous because the emblem is a electricity, like it's a like it looks like a lightning rod,
Yeah,
a lightning,
who knows,
and then
yeah.
it's and AC and DC are the two type of currents you have, and Kiss, which is the Knights in Service of Satan. That's what I've heard.
Oh yeah,
so many
yeah,
times.
yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah, this guy did that. This guy, this
so we
guy
got the
had
same
me.
sources.
Yeah, they had the whole kind of thing, and then he got
Yeah.
to this little point. I said,
Yeah.
and people were telling me like, well, you know that this is the devil. I mean, look at the pictures. I said, I understand that, but
Yeah.
why did he have to lie?
Yeah, exactly.
I said, why did he have to lie? He didn't
Yeah.
have to tell a lie to convince me that
Yes.
some of this music is demonic
Yeah.
and probably stimulating me in areas I don't want to be stimulated.
Yes.
Okay, you got me. But then when you drop, you just don't understand that a little leaven leavens the whole lump.
Yes.
I mean, it's a biblical principle.
It is a biblical
You drop a
principle.
little lie into something
Yes.
and like we're spun out.
Yeah.
Right?
And
And, that's
what-
what, and that's
yeah.
what we're saying. Like if
Exactly.
you have your doubts about Christianity, ask the questions. And we don't want to be stiff-arming people.
Exactly. Stiff arming is a good expression because that's exactly what you're doing with young people. Like, that's what I heard when I was a kid. Oh, you need to drop it. Tell me to drop it because they worship Satan. I didn't know that before. I dropped it. But I didn't drop it because someone told me lies about it.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, if I would have dropped it because I believed the lie and not believed the truth, then I would have picked it up later on.
Yeah.
Oh, you lie to me, then I'm going to listen to even more. So the point being is, I think when we're discussing about this deconstructions, we can look at these guys are weirdos, they're deconstructing, demolitioning, whatever it is. So we, of course, I think it's a mistake. But as leaders, which you and I are with our people, we have to be very careful in what we communicate, how we argue for things. It has to be neat and biblical. Because if I come up with fake arguments, they're gonna find out those fake arguments, and then they're gonna turn back to, okay, so you don't know what you're talking about. So if you don't know what you're talking about in this area, then do you know what you're talking about in this
Exactly, yeah.
area? And then we kind of discrediting ourselves, and we also discrediting the scriptures because we're not doing a good job defending it. We are doing a good job defending things with lies, and that's a very bad way of arguing.
Yeah, I think, that's... You're onto something with the language here we're using. We're kicking around some of these words, like you're saying. Okay, deconstruction. We're saying that's a positive because yes, there are parts of if you want to make something more stable, more attractive, more up to date, then you got to get rid of the stuff that doesn't belong there. That isn't serving well. And then, but when you demolish something, it's irretrievable.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to this other D word, which is like, you're right. Like a lot of the deconstruction is trying to discredit the Bible and Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can't prove to me that this is true, so I'm not going to believe it. And by the way, now I'm just going to say it's not good. It just doesn't work. That you've probably heard some. It's just not working for me.
Yes.
And that's a hard question to answer, isn't it?
Yes.
If you get a young person who comes to me like, prayer's not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the Bible's not working for me. I just don't think Christianity is, the first they say it's not true. I'm just not finding it to be true. But what they're really saying is like, it's not really good. It's not really good for me.
Yeah.
And we got to admit that there have been some fabulous, not fabulous. Let's see. That's the bad word. That's a good word. I want to use failures, catastrophic failures.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, the Crusades, all those kind of things. Yes, we know that they're false premises and drove a lot of that happening. We're sorry for that. But do you know who Jesus is?
Mm-hmm.
And do you believe he is who he says he is? And then you have to believe what he says about the Bible. Because if we're operating on Jesus and the Comforter, who is the Holy Spirit, then we have done the right kind of deconstruction. We've thrown out the old and we've allowed ourselves to become a new creation.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's exactly. So in a way where people use the word deconstruction, though, the movement deconstructionism, it wasn't born in the context of what we're talking about. Deconstruction is, first it was a philosophical context, and then an architectural context. which in the idea of deconstruction, the philosophy, it means the same thing. Like, it's going down to the bare truth and minimum, and you may or may not find it. In architecture, it's also the same concept, making it it's not around anymore because actually it was self-defeating. And then it's interesting because there's, I think, a museum in Ohio, I think in the States, where to deconstruction architecture. So they have like doors that go nowhere, stairs that just, and so the idea of deconstruction. But the very point was, and I think it was pointed out by some apologists that said, well, you didn't apply the concept of deconstruction to your foundations. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a stair that doesn't go anywhere. So the point is, for you to be able to be, like, for people to be able to deconstruct anything, they have to be on a solid foundation. And I think it's the same argument we made when it comes down to faith. People say, oh, well, I don't need to believe in God, I have my reasoning. Yes, but for your reasoning to be capable of anything, for sure, it has to be built to reason. Otherwise, it's only an accident. The point that C.S. Lewis is making, thinking that my brain was not designed to think. It's the same odds as upsetting a milk jug on the floor and getting a map of London. That's his point.
Yeah.
So if God does not exist, and if all evolution is true, then you cannot know for sure ever that your reasoning capacities are capable of coming up with actually a sound way of thinking. So So even if I go, I'm going to use my brain to deconstruct the Bible, then the brain will not be reliable unless it was built by God, which is a self-defeating argument. Because now you have to argue for the existence of God to argue against it. Because otherwise your brain is not capable of thinking by its own. So it's the same concept here. So I understand that you want your feelings to be first. I understand that we only be subjective. I get it, on the other way. But life doesn't work this way.
Yeah.
Whether I like that 2 and 2 equals 4, or I doesn't change the fact that it does.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, we have a couple of minutes to finish. But the point would be, how can we help each other in the faith, especially with people who are going through questioning periods? Then let's be available to answer. And when we do give answers, let's give answer with as honest as possible. So we don't have all the answers, but we can lead people to God.
I think there's the question for us, is to be to live as be kind, tenderhearted, abounding in the work of the Lord. I mean, that's what we want to do. Is like we understand, if we've wrestled with these kinds of questions, to give space for people to wrestle with these kinds of questions. Like, and I think you said it very well. Like, if you're going to build something, you have to have a foundation somewhere, and that's leading the foundation. Okay, so Christianity, organized Christianity, church life just doesn't work. And I'm like, okay. But if we open the Bible and we read about this person named Jesus, can you believe in him? It's like when I encountered another Muslim woman on Saturday, and she asked me, this is, I told her I'm a believer in Jesus, and she said, well, I'm a Muslim. I said, well, Jesus is one of your prophets, right? Yes, he is. He's a prophet. And I said, and prophets tell the truth, right? Yes. I said, well, I've read the Bible. And in the Gospels, Jesus has a gift for you. Jesus wants to give you new life. It says that. And you can ask him to give you the new life. And I said, you can ask Jesus the prophet to give you the new life. And so that's where I went. Yeah. I didn't try and deconstruct all of her premises about who Allah is and who Jesus is. I just said, you believe Jesus is a prophet? Yes. Our religion teaches that. I said, well, Jesus has a gift for you. And in the words that were written about Jesus, he says, ask Jesus for the gift that he has for you and see what happens. So there you go. Yeah. I didn't destroy her. Yes. I gave her an opening. Yeah. And maybe that's the question that people who are trying to decommission, deconstruct, demolish.
You're adopting my French accent.
Yes, there you go.
You're putting the intonation on the wrong syllable, like a good Frenchman would.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, but we just, if you're trying to, ask Jesus for help. Yeah. I mean, could you take a month and just ask Jesus for help, read through the Bible and ask the Holy Spirit to help you? Yes. Could you do that? That's the challenge that I would say.
Yes. I think it answers one of the questions: how should Christians engage with friends and family members who are entering into the deconstruction process? Being available.
Yeah.
I want to answer your question. I do say, I mean, Jehu's he was in my class, right, years ago in apologetics. I tell the students every single year, if I remember to say it, I was where you were, I was where you are, and also maybe I went further than all of you in my life. Like I question everything, and I'm not teaching apologetics because it's a good hobby. I'm teaching it because I think it's fundamental to and then people gave me the room to be what I wanted to be, what I was looking for, in all the questions I had. And then when I got all my answers, then the 40 plus years later, here I am. I'm working with God, serving God because I believe that what I believe is true, and not because I was strong armed into it, as you said earlier. It's because I had the room to ask the right questions, find the people who had the right answers. And I did my deconstruction a little bit in life, and I did that a few times when I come from your family, your religion. I was a Catholic first, and then you go to the church for 3 years. I'm not sure about that. I'm going to deconstruct over here, and I come back to this truth, which was way more stronger than what I had before. And then you go through, you work in the church, maybe a little more legalistic attitude. Then you learn things about leadership. I have to unlearn that. So you deconstruct that in that way. And then you my view of leadership has changed several times.
Yeah.
And I think in a good way, like it's not like completely revolutionizing my thinking, but it just fine-tuned some things that I thought it was the best way to do it. It's not, absolutely not. And I think it's very important for us to be flexible and humble before God, to be taught, by the Spirit. And that means when people or friends go through this, then we have to be available to help them.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, friends, we hope we've helped you.
We had a good time.
We've had a good time talking about
Jehu
this.
had a great time to do this on his birthday. I think
have
that's
a great,
good.
yeah. So this is the Grace Hour Show. We want to encourage you to subscribe to our show on the YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other places. And there is a website, gracehour.org, and you could find this program archived there soon. And if you want to listen all over again, but we encourage you, if you're having questions with your faith, open the Bible. God is good. We can say that God is good. And so for Philippe Serradji and Jehu Vandiver, I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis saying have a great afternoon and a great rest of the week. God bless.
Amen.